Hello everyone. I just want to start off this video by saying I am very sorry for not posting recently. My phone broke, and before that, when I was about to post the video, it broke. Film the video itself. You've probably seen from either the thumbnail or the caption that this is my review of the Throne of Glass series. I know it's a bit late. I read it just a bit ago, last month. But yeah, this is my thorough review, how I read it, what I thought about the tandem read, where I read the Assassin's Blade, which order you should read it, all of that, whether I liked it or not. And yeah, so I guess let's get into it. So the way that it is ordered now, that's the order I read it in. So I read the Assassin's Blade, Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, Heir of Fire, Queen of Shadows, Empire of Storms, Tower of Dawn, and Kingdom of Ash. So that's the order that I read it in, and I'll explain why. So there are 4 orders you can read the series. You can read it the Assassin's Blade order. If you have not heard about this, there's this, you could search it up. There's a whole thing about a debate on TikTok on what order you should read it, how you should read it, whether you should do the tandem read or not. I'll explain what that is. And to be honest, I guess it's just up to you, and I'll explain. You can hear thousands of different people, you know what I mean, like so many different people on TikTok will tell you how they read it, tell you whether they liked it or not, like I'm doing now, but ultimately it's up to you. It's up to what you think you want to do. I'll tell you about the fact that if there are spoilers, what order I read it in, what order I was going to read it in, all of that. But first, let me tell you the orders you can read in. So you can start Assassin's Blade, Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, and then Heir of Fire. Or you can read it Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, Assassin's Blade, Heir of Fire. Or you can read it Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, Heir of Fire, and then Assassin's Blade. So essentially, the Assassin's Blade is the 0.5 book, so the prologue to the entire series. It gives you a backstory about Selena, the main character, and yeah, it's quite an emotional read once you know what's going on. Most people will tell you read the Assassin's Blade third, but I read it first and I enjoyed it, and I definitely would recommend it reading it that way, and this is why. So first off, once you read Throne of Glass and Crown of Midnight, if you read it third, there are countless spoilers for the Assassin's Blade in those two, and that is the game changer for me. I was going to read it third, but I decided to read it first because of those. I hate spoilers. I absolutely hate knowing what is going to happen in the book, and the Assassin's Blade is quite an emotional read once you realize what happens. So they said you would read these two and then be like, oh my gosh, this is happening, all of that. But another thing, the reason why I'm glad that I read it first, is at the end of Crown of Midnight, there's a huge cliffhanger, which I personally did not see coming. It was a game changer for the entire thing, and at that point, you just want plot progression. You want to go into Heir of Fire. And then as the series goes on, it gets better and better. I feel like you would DNF the Assassin's Blade if you read it third because of the fact that all of these things happen. And if you read it first, then you get the references, you get when people show up, when you see people from the Assassin's Blade, when things happen, when there are references made, if you read it first, so you'll know all that. You can, of course, read it third. That would be more emotional. Then you'd connect things from the other books, obviously. But I don't think you'd pay attention to most of the details from the Assassin's Blade in the first 2 books, or even the third book, if you read it third or fourth. Fourth would be much more emotional because you get obviously more spoilers from the Assassin's Blade, and then you realize what happens and why she's feeling this way about these things. But it references to the things that happen in the Assassin's Blade so lightly, and you don't realize it. It'll just pass over you and you won't realize it. That's why I also personally enjoyed reading it first, because it still had a very emotional impact every time I connected something from the Assassin's Blade from the first 2 books, or from the first 3 books, whichever. And it gave me a very good read. So it depends whether A, you don't mind spoilers, B, you want more of an emotional read, C, if you want to know the things that happen beforehand, or you're fine with them passing over your head and you not realizing them. But personally, I would definitely recommend reading it first. I would not go back and change it at all if I was going to, and that is just my opinion. So it's completely up to you. People will also tell you, oh, she published The Assassin's Blade after Crown of Midnight, so you should read it in that order, as in Sarah J. Maas. But again, it is completely up to you. Now, this is technically the order of it without doing the whole Assassin's Blade thing. It goes 0.5, 1, Throne of Glass, 2, Crown of Midnight, 3, Heir of Fire, 4, Queen of Shadows, 5, Empire of Storm, 6, Tower of Dawn, and 7, Kingdom of Ash. In total, it is an 8-book series, if you count The Assassin's Blade as a book of its own, which I personally do. It's quite a big commitment, I will say. It's a lot of information, but it's really, really, really good and definitely worth it. I personally love the series. I feel like the first few books were slower, and then as they went on, they got much more entertaining. Now I would like to talk about the tandem read. Alright, so the tandem read is with Empire of Storms and Tower of Dawn. Those are the 2 books before the last book, Kingdom of Ash. So another thing I would like to say before we get into it is that as the series went on, there was a lot more information and it was much more entertaining, but the books got longer, so it got harder and harder for me to continue them, because at that point I really did want to read a romance book, but I wanted to push through and finish it, which I'm very glad I did, and I wanted to keep all the information fresh in my mind, and it was a very, very good series. I feel like that was just me personally. So if you get bored of fantasy books pretty quickly, you might want to read them, you know, a couple at a time. I don't know, it depends on you, but for me, because they started getting thicker, the last book is 980 pages. The last book, as in Kingdom of Ash, is 980 pages. So you want to keep track of that, and yeah, just keep that in mind. So a tandem read is when you read 2 books at once, and I will explain it. So these 2 books are happening at the exact same time in 2 different continents, 2 different places entirely, 2 different sets of main characters. Obviously they have connected and been in the same books together. In the first couple books, they're not new characters at all. Most people say that they like Empire of Storms more than Tower of Dawn, but I have some things to say about that. So personally, I started out with the tandem read. Then about halfway into both the books, I just wanted plot progression in Tower of Dawn. So most people say they like Empire of Storms more than they like Tower of Dawn. That was not the case for me. When I was reading the tandem read, I adored Tower of Dawn much more than Empire of Storms. I found it too confusing to continue the tandem read. I could have continued, but I just decided to stop the tandem read because I felt like it would be a much more enjoyable experience for myself as well if I read it, you know, separately. And then once I stopped doing the tandem read, I enjoyed Empire of Storms much more and Tower of Dawn less. And I don't know whether it's just because the beginning of Tower of Dawn was better than the rest of it, but I definitely enjoyed Tower of Dawn much less after I continued the tandem read, because I feel like there was, once I stopped doing the tandem read, then the part where I was kind of wishing for, I guess, had already come to an end, and it was going on to different things in the plot that were leading up to Kingdom of Ash. So without saying spoilers, I feel like the different plot changes in it also obviously played a part in that. Okay, so there are guides online. I do not have one to put up on here. I personally tab the books, so you can tab them, like, basically the guides will tell you which chapters to read as you start reading. So example, you read chapters 1 till 5. So I put a tab on chapter 6, and then once I reach chapter 6, let's say this is chapter 6, I would switch to Tower of Dawn, read chapter 1. There would be a tab on chapter 2. Then I'd switch back, take off the tab at chapter 6, and then read chapter 6 to 7, and then move on, take off the tab at chapter 2, and so on and so forth. So that's how you would do the tandem read. Or you can have a list and check off the chapters once you read them if you don't want to do the tabbing. But I would recommend, if you know yourself that you're gonna continue looking at the books while you're tabbing them and get spoilers, then I would not recommend doing that. So there are two different things. There's one where they will tell you where to tab it so you know when to switch books. And there's another one where they tell you which chapters to read so you don't do the tabbing. So there are two different ways. So you read the books at the same time. They're happening at the exact same timeline. I found it personally too annoying for me to continue switching point of views and switching places so often, but I did definitely enjoy tagged on while I was reading the tandem read. So that's what you have to know about my experience. All right, so that was my review of this series. Thank you so much for watching. So something else, if you guys want to know, I have links to my Goodreads, TikTok. My link tree is also in my bio if you want to go check those out. I have my links to my Goodreads and TikTok and YouTube and all that in my link tree as well, and my Amazon wish list. So yeah, just thought I should mention that in case some of you guys don't know. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and yeah, see you guys in the next video.